They're communists. They're frickin' communists, and we worship them. It's all BS. A true capitalist would let a business fail. Okay, understand that capitalism destroys inefficient companies. So if you suck, the capitalism will wipe you out. You're out of business. Not too long ago, there was Blockbuster Video. Then Netflix came along and they're toast. They're just gone. And so a lot of true capitalists wipes out the inefficient or the obsolete. But for the last so many years, since 1907, really, they've been saving the banks. So the banks are so corrupt, and the reason the Federal Reserve had to come in was to protect the rich bankers. And what they did was back in 2008, there was quantitative easing, which is a very complex subject. But basically, the Fed just prints money and gives it to banks, okay, to prevent them from failing. So that's not capitalism, that's Marxism, that's socialism, that's communism. It's called central banks. But since most of our school teachers are communists anyway, they don't know the difference. So they can't teach kids that. So what happened in 1971, President Nixon then took the dollar off the gold standard. And so that they could print as much money as they wanted to. So what the Fed is trying to do is print tons of debt, like I think 10 trillion this year, to prevent the banks from failing. So they need inflation so they could pay off the debt with fake money. So anyway, the reason inflation is going to wipe out people is because the average person is a consumer. So everybody talks about, I want to, T-bone steak is this now, and gasoline's this, and toilet paper is that, and all this. But that's because Biden and company and the Fed are protecting the bankers. That's why I feel for the working class people. I think it's criminal that our school system is part of Marxism. There's no financial education in schools, and it's not a mistake. But today we can see what's happening. It's all BS. So the people who are complaining about inflation, just know it's because the Federal Reserve Bank, the US Treasury, which is Janet Yellen, who was also head of the Federal Reserve Bank, they're as corrupt as they come. They're communists. They're frickin' communists, and we worship them. This is what's sad. I say this often when I looked up how much is a trillion. If you spent $1 a minute, it would take you 32,000 years to spend $1 trillion. 32,000 years. It takes them 1 minute to print $1 trillion. It used to be, if you printed, let's say $1 million, the GDP rose by 1,000,010. Today, you print $1 million, the GDP only comes up by 7. In other words, we're going further and further in debt. We cannot pay off the debt. And so what they're doing, they print more money, hoping to pay off that debt. It just makes the debt bigger, and this piece of toilet paper worth less. But just remember, I'm coming out with my latest book. It's called The Capitalist Manifesto, and it goes into this. It's how our school system is Marxist. They're communists. My family are Marxist. They don't know it. They're good people. But they believe in giving people fish. I believe in teaching people to fish. And the other thing is the Fed is Marxist. So if you understand how communism has infiltrated America, that's why I wrote the Capitalist Manifesto. You can be a communist if you want. You can be a Marxist if you want. Your choice. You can wear a mask if you want. But what I don't like is when you get fired if you don't take the jab. That's fascism. And that's what I fight against. You don't want to take the jab? I think it's criminal that they fire you. Mm-hmm. That's not capitalism. That's fascism. That's Adolf Hitler, Mussolini time. Before it was Rich Dad Poor Dad, my first book was, if you want to be rich and happy, don't go to school, because most school teachers are Marxists. They just don't know. They believe in giving people fish rather than teaching people to fish. We teach. We don't tell people what to do. So you got to be very, very careful, because my new book's coming out. It's called The Capitalist Manifesto. But the terminology is this: who is the counterparty to this gold coin? God. And who is the counterparty to this? The government. Who do you trust? Who's the counterparty to Bitcoin? Blockchain. It's people's money. I trust the people more than the government.